Testing, testing. Yes. Testing, 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 testing. Testing, testing. Still nothing. Right. Let me try. Okay, cool. Sorry. So basically what we were saying is we recapped what the internet is, how to work with it, and then yesterday, like what is a server and what are some options that you can use to deploy an app. Today we're going to focus on more like how to do that and how to do that in an efficient way. And so I wanted to just start with questions. If you guys have any questions so far about anything we've covered to date. And if not, I know we're kind of short on time, so I'm just going to see what's on the slides and figure that out together. All right, so today is day 4. Okay, so the expectations for today is I really just want you to walk away with what is DevOps and what are some terms that are common in the DevOps field and what do they mean at a bare minimum. And then ideally, you'll also learn what tools are most interesting for you because there's lots of different workflows in the DevOps space and you can kind of choose your own path. But more of the time, it's more like what does the company that you're working at do and what have they chosen? And so you'll kind of see the different options. This slide is, you've seen it before, but today is really the slide because I'm not an expert in this field. A little bit about me. I've done a cloud storage startup, but I wasn't on the DevOps team at all. And so I'm more familiar with this from a impact to the company perspective because we had a team of DevOps engineers. And so I would just go to them and be like, make sure things don't break. And if things break, please fix it. And then it's more like how they do that and how they do that on an efficient way and more like how they manage how like things like logging and kind of monitoring and stuff like that. And so that's my side of the exposure. But today we'll figure out whatever we don't know, we'll figure that out together. This is just Bija's slide about expect it to be very challenging. But today I'm going to focus more on the exposure side. So I just want to expose you guys to different terms and then define things. And then review a lot of this stuff in any talk that I give. I say it's really easy to figure out just by Googling basic terms. But the goal of these presentations is to expose you to the terms so that you know what to Google and kind of the context for what to Google. So like if someone just says like, oh yeah, like Ansible, that's just a word, right? But if you're given context to say like that's the name of a company that then does these automation tools to deploy a server, then you kind of it's easier to Google to be like Ansible company or like what does Ansible do, right? And so that's kind of the goal for at least the first talk. Yeah, so DevOps obviously stands for developer operations. And so we'll break that down in the next presentation. And then a lot of that consists of automation. And a lot of people think DevOps is like super hard. And it is kind of one of the more advanced sides of like web development. So like there's like building the apps, but then there's like kind of deploying and managing and maintaining those apps. That's more of the DevOps side. But a lot of the things to keep in mind is DevOps is really for the developer. It's more like a developer convenience a lot of the time. So theoretically, you could do all of these things without any of these tools that you're going to learn today, but it's just so much harder. Like if you've ever tried to deploy like an AWS anything like manually by like going through the AWS interface, that's hard, right? But like if you have a tool that's just like deploy AWS instance and then it just gives you a bunch of options and you're like click a button, that's DevOps, right? Like it's like automation for your convenience because everyone wants it to be more convenient for you. Like the developers want it to be easy. The companies want you to do it easier so that you spend more money, right? If you deploy an instance, they make money. So they want you to do it more, right? And so DevOps is just a way to to do things easier and to make your life easier so that everyone's happy and everything's smoother. Yeah, and keeps things up and running smoother. And in case something does go wrong, you can fix it faster and fix it smoother as well. So that's the whole concept. It's just making your life easier as a developer to keep things up and running. Cool. So today, the first couple talks is really just general talks and introductions to terms and stuff like that. The first real content would be the GitHub action stuff. That's like the first thing that's like usable, I think, because it's just like something to do. And then CI/CD, you'll learn about. CI is continuous integration, and CD is more like continuous deployment, or yeah, continuous development. And so you'll learn about that later. But CI is basically internal, like keeping things consistent, and then CD is like deploying things and keeping things up and running. Then we'll come back and do log aggregation management. So a lot of things, you guys have worked with the CLIs and stuff, and so it's not as it's not as like obvious when something goes wrong on a command line, unless you're trying to actively do something and you just say like, you get something back that says like, oh, you can't do that. But once you have something going, it's hard to keep track of like 20 different windows and like keep track of like 20 different terminals to see which ones are still up and running and which ones have died already. And then so there are ways to automate a lot of that to keep track of everything. And so that's both log aggregation and monitoring and alerting. And then at the end of the day, I guess we'll talk about if something goes wrong, how do you know it went wrong? And then how do you fix it? Cool. So that's it for the intro and agenda section. If you guys have specific questions, that would actually help me and all the other speakers. Like if you guys have specific situations that you want to deal with, or specific kind of areas that you want to focus on, I think that would help both me and everyone coming after. Who has heard of DevOps, like the term? You guys have heard it, obviously, I'm assuming. Okay. Who's worked in like a professional setting with deploying something to production? Okay. Okay. And who's a student? Okay. Cool. Okay. So I think we'll skew towards just introducing topics so that you guys are more familiar with it, because it feels like only a few people have done production deployment. Cool. I'm assuming you guys don't need a break, so I'm just going to jump into the next talk, if that's cool. Yeah, and then you can jump into the first talk.
Why then that's good instead of why do we have a separate role for it?
Okay, cool. I can answer that now. And so a lot of places don't have a separate role. So a separate role is a